On a quiet airfield in the American West, a converted DC-10 airliner sits on the ramp, painted red and white, its belly rebuilt to carry nearly 10,000 gallons of fire retardant. It has not flown in 9 days, and every one of those 9 days, the company that owns it collected a large check from the government for doing absolutely nothing but being ready. No fire, no mission, no smoke on the horizon, just a parked airplane and a paycheck. This is the strange heart of this business. You are not really paid to fight fires. You are paid to be ready to fight fires, whether they come or not. Meet the world of the air tanker operator. A company like 10 Tanker Air Carrier, or Coulson Aviation, or Bridger Aerospace, that owns some of the most specialized aircraft on Earth. And by the end of this video, you will see why one of these planes can cost tens of millions of dollars, sit idle for most of the year, fly only in a narrow window, and still run as a business, because the money in aerial firefighting does not work the way anyone expects. The plane nobody builds on purpose. Start with the aircraft, because almost none of them were born to do this job. No factory makes a firefighting airplane from scratch. Instead, operators take an existing aircraft and convert it. A retired airliner, a surplus military transport, an old cargo hauler, stripped out and rebuilt with a giant tank in its belly, and a system of doors and pumps to drop the load. 10 Tanker took the DC-10, a wide-body passenger jet from the 1970s, and turned it into a very large air tanker that can drop a curtain of retardant longer than a football field. Coulson converts C-130 Hercules transports and even Boeing 737s. These are not toys. A single very large air tanker can lay down a line of retardant to slow a wall of fire before it reaches a town. Others fly the BAE-146 or the CL-415 Super Scooper, a purpose-built amphibian that skims across a lake, scoops up water in seconds, and dumps it on the flames. It is the rare aircraft in this world that was actually designed for the job, rather than converted into it. Here is where the channel comes in. For decades, this entire industry was built on military hand-me-downs. Surplus World War II and Cold War bombers and patrol planes, bought cheap from government auctions, converted into tankers, and flown until they fell apart. The air tanker fleet was a second life for the machines of old wars, which matters because that origin story is also where the industry nearly destroyed itself. The contract that pays you to wait. Now the part that makes the whole business possible. The contract. An air tanker operator does not sell retardant by the gallon to whoever needs it. It signs contracts with government agencies, the United States Forest Service, CAL FIRE, and others. And those contracts come in two shapes that decide everything. First comes the exclusive use contract. Under it, the agency pays the operator a daily availability rate, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars a day, just to keep that aircraft and its crew dedicated, positioned, and ready for the entire fire season. That money arrives whether the plane flies or not. On top of it, when the aircraft actually flies a mission, the operator bills a separate flight hour rate for the time in the air. So the plane earns twice, once for standing by, once for flying. So the revenue splits in two. A guaranteed base for being available and a variable bonus for actually flying. Second comes call when needed. No daily retainer, a higher flight hour rate, and the aircraft only earns when it is summoned. More upside per flight, far less certainty. You fly, you earn. You wait, you earn nothing. For an operator without deep pockets, that is a frightening way to run an airline. Sit with what the exclusive use deal really is. It is a standby fee for a catastrophe that might not come. A government is buying insurance in the form of a ready airplane, and it pays for that readiness continuously, all season, so that on the day a canyon erupts in flame, there is a tanker fueled, loaded, and airborne within minutes. Readiness is the product, and the flying is almost secondary, the season that decides years. This is where the paradox bites, and where owning one of these planes becomes a gamble on the weather. An air tanker earns in a window. Fire season in a given region might run a few months, and outside it, the aircraft largely sits. During that window, everything depends on something no operator controls: weather. In a wet, mild year, the fires stay small, the calls stay few, and the tanker spends much of the season parked, earning its availability rate but almost none of its flight hour money. In a brutal, bone-dry year, The same tanker flies until the crew hits their duty limits, dropping load after load, day after day, and the flight hour revenue pours in. So two nearly identical years can produce wildly different results, and the operator cannot predict which is coming. What the exclusive use contract does is soften that swing, even in the quiet year. The availability rate keeps the lights on. It is a floor under a business that would otherwise be at the total mercy of rainfall. No rain, big fires, heavy flying. Heavy rain, few fires, a quiet ramp. The operator lives or dies on a forecast no one can make. That floor is the single reason a sane person would ever own an aircraft this expensive to do a job this seasonal. The costs hiding in the hangar. None of this is cheap, and the bills do not stop when the plane stops. An aircraft like this is a tens of millions of dollars asset, often an old airframe that demands relentless, expensive maintenance. And these planes are not flown gently. Aerial firefighting means diving low into rugged terrain, through smoke and violent heat-driven turbulence, hauling heavy loads, pulling hard out of canyons. That kind of flying punishes an airframe like almost nothing else in aviation, which means constant inspections, structural checks, and repairs on machines that are frequently decades old to begin with. Every hard pull-up loads the wings. Every drop shifts tons of weight in seconds. The airframe pays for all of it. Then there is the crew. A tanker pilot is a rare and highly skilled professional, and you must keep them trained and available through a season that only pays them to fly part of the time. Insurance on this kind of operation is punishing because the work is dangerous. Pilots die in this job. Insurers know it, and they price it. Add the specialized retardant delivery systems, the ground crews, the bases, the fuel, and the positioning of aircraft around a region, and the fixed cost of owning and standing up a tanker fleet is enormous. Most of it due whether the fires come or not, the crashes that rewrote the industry. Here is the failure that changed everything, and it came straight out of those cheap military airframes. In 2002, within weeks of each other, two aging air tankers broke apart in midair while fighting fires. Both were old, surplus military aircraft that had been converted and flown hard for decades, and in both cases the wings failed under the stress of the work. Both crews died, and the whole industry shook. In the aftermath, the government grounded much of the old converted bomber fleet, and the era of flying ancient surplus warplanes until they came apart was effectively over. What replaced it is the modern industry you see now. Newer jets, tighter rules, bigger checks to get on contract at all. Newer airframes, purpose-built conversions, far stricter airworthiness oversight, and a much higher bar to put a tanker on contract. It made the fleet safer. It also made it far more expensive, and it pushed the business toward the well-capitalized operators who could afford modern aircraft and the engineering to prove them sound. My own read is that this is the moment aerial firefighting stopped being a scrappy surplus trade and became a serious capital business, and the operators who understood that shift are the ones who still fly today. How the survivors actually win. So, how do the operators who thrive in this strange market pull it off? A few things separate them. They chase the exclusive use contracts, because the daily availability rate is the floor that makes the whole thing survivable. A fleet living on call when needed alone is a fleet betting everything on a bad fire year showing up. They run modern, well-maintained aircraft, because after 2002, an airframe that cannot pass rigorous inspection cannot earn at all. They keep their crews and their certifications ready, so that when the agency calls, they can launch inside the tight window that wins the next contract. Miss the launch window enough times, and the contract goes to someone else next year. And the shrewdest of them think globally, chasing fire seasons in both hemispheres, sending aircraft to Australia when the American season ends, so a plane that would sit idle half the year keeps earning on the far side of the planet. One airframe, 2 fire seasons, a full year of work. The verdict. So, can you make money owning a firefighting aircraft? Yes, but only if you understand that you are not really in the flying business. You are in the readiness business. In the good version, you hold solid, exclusive use contracts across multiple agencies, a modern fleet, and maybe a second season in another hemisphere. Availability payments cover your fixed costs, no matter the weather. And in a heavy fire year, the flight hour revenue turns a steady operation into a very profitable one. You own an asset the world increasingly cannot do without, as fire seasons grow longer and fiercer. In the bad version, you overpaid for aging aircraft, leaned too hard on call when needed work, and then a wet, quiet year arrived. Fires never came, flight hours never materialized, and your expensive plane sat on the ramp, burning money in maintenance and crew costs with almost nothing coming in. Or worse, an airframe failed an inspection or failed in the air and took your contracts and your reputation with it. Same red and white plane on the same ramp. What differs is whether the contracts underneath it were built to pay you for waiting or only for flying. Next time a fire fills the sky and a tanker roars low over a ridge to lay down a line of red, remember what you are actually watching. Not just an aircraft fighting a fire, a business model built on getting paid every single day to sit ready for a disaster that may or may not arrive. A plane that looks most heroic in the air spends most of its life parked, quiet, and profitable, waiting. In this business, the flying is the part everyone sees. Waiting is the part that pays.